Hey guys, it's Julia, and today I'm coming to you with my midsummer roundup thing. I was kind of inspired by Christine over at Pullmanana's Books monthly stories I ate this month, and I wanted to talk more about just the books that I had read. I wanted to talk about the movies and TV shows also that I watched. So in this little roundup, I am going to be talking about the books, the movies, and the TV shows that I have read / watched these past 2 months. So this is mostly just like June and July. I'm going to try and talk about these things in the chronological order of when I consumed this media, but like it's not gonna be exact. I don't remember exactly when I read or watched all of these things. So we are going to begin with a TV show, and that is The White Princess, which is a Starz historical drama about Elizabeth of York and her at first reluctant marriage to Henry VII. This was a miniseries. It ran from April to June, and it is over now, and I'm really upset about that, but it was absolutely magnificent. It is based off of a novel of the same name by Philippa Gregory, and I'm kind of intrigued now to read the book because I kind of want to know more about this story. It's a really cool story. The acting was phenomenal. The costumes and the settings were so beautiful. It was really an enjoyable watch. I would definitely recommend it if you like historical dramas or anything like that. And so I gave The White Princess an A. And then I went on to read my first book of this roundup, which was Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. I actually listened to this on audiobook. This is the first book in the Shadow and Bone trilogy, and it is the first book also in the Grishaverse. It takes place in this really cool fantasy world. There is a really interesting magic system that I definitely appreciated. The audiobook narrator was definitely very talented. I don't, however, listen to a lot of audiobooks, or I didn't before that. I'm starting to kind of get into it. I think that if I had read it, I might have liked this book a little bit more just because I would have been able to give my own voice to the characters, but I still enjoyed it and I give this a B. Next, I have a movie, and that is Wonder Woman, and I'm sure you guys have all seen this and loved it. It was fantastic. Gal Gadot is freaking amazing. She's just an amazing actress and so badass, and she just really was so perfect for this role. And on average, I am a Marvel person, and I still do prefer Marvel movies to DC movies. This is most definitely the best movie in the DC extended universe. To be fair, the competition isn't that hard. This was better than all of those, and on top of that, it was actually a good movie. It was definitely a very, very hyped movie, and while I did really, really enjoy it, it didn't live up to all of my expectations, but then again, my expectations I think were just too high. But again, I really, really enjoyed it, and everyone did a phenomenal job, and it was just such a cool concept. I loved the Amazons, and I wanted more of that. Like, I just want a movie before this happened that just is all about the Amazons and their like way of life and everything. Back to the books again, we have Siege and Storm by Leigh Bardugo, which is the sequel to Shadow and Bone, and again, I listened to this on audiobook. Not much to say about it because it is the sequel, so I can't really talk about the plot without spoiling it, but I actually enjoyed this book a little more than I enjoyed Shadow and Bone. There were some really cool characters that were introduced in it, and I really enjoyed them, and so I gave this book a B+. Next, I watched Doctor Who's most recent season, season 10. I watched it as it was coming out, and this was the last season for our current Doctor, Peter Capaldi, and I think a lot of people have had a difficult relationship with Peter Capaldi. He's definitely not my doctor. My favorite doctor is David Tennant, and then after him is definitely Matt Smith, but I do think that Peter Capaldi kind of came into his stride a little bit in this season. I think that he did a really good job. I really enjoyed the new companion in Bill Potts, played by Pearl Mackie, and I am interested to see what happens there. I'm definitely excited for the new doctor, Jodie Whittaker. It's going to be amazing that now we have a female doctor for the first time ever, and not gonna lie, I'm excited to see what happens with Moffat no longer being the showrunner, because I do have some issues with what he has done in the past in terms of just kind of consistency and things like that. But all in all, I think that this was a pretty good season. There were some really good episodes, and I'm going to give it a B. Next, I have another book, and that is Moxie by Jennifer Matthew, and this is an arc. This book comes out in September. To sum this book up, I'm just going to read a little snippet from the back of it. An unlikely teenager starts a feminist revolution in a small-town Texas high school in this new novel from Jennifer Matthew. I was definitely really, really excited to read this. It was really good. It had a lot of cool references. It had a wonderful, wonderful message. There were some things just in the plot that I kind of wish had happened a little differently, but those were just my own personal preferences. I think that this is definitely going to be an important read, and it was very enjoyable. It was actually a really quick read for me, and there were just some amazing quotes in it also. As you can see, I kind of just jotted them down, and it definitely gets you thinking, and like I said, it's just such an important topic and such an important read, and so I gave this book an A-. Next, I have another TV show which I was just kind of watching throughout these past couple of months. I binge watched it for the first time last semester with my roommate, and I absolutely love it, and so when I was just kind of doing nothing, I would just stick it on and have it on in the background or watch it, and that is It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. This is a ridiculous comedy show on FX. It is definitely not for the faint of heart. There is some really just messed up humor in it, but I absolutely adore it, and it is probably one of my favorite sitcoms ever. The characters are great, the acting is great, and it's just beyond ridiculous. It reminds me a lot of Seinfeld, but like if Seinfeld had been on a cable network. And like I said, I mean, this show is just really so offensive and horrible, but it is so funny, and it does it all with the point of poking fun at itself, and it is just wonderful. Danny DeVito is in it. It's 12 seasons long, and I think that up to season 11 is on Netflix, and season 12 should be on Netflix pretty soon, hopefully. That's one of my favorite TV shows. I have to give this show an A+. On a more serious note, I have another book, and that is Salt to the Sea by Ruta Sepetys, and this book was phenomenal. It is a World War II historical novel, and it follows these 4 main characters. They're all very young. It's towards the end of the war, taking place in Eastern Europe, where you have the Soviet forces closing in on the Germans, and it's just a really, really interesting story. So well written and researched, and just so beautiful. And I don't want to say anything else about it because I don't want to spoil it, but I absolutely adored this book. I give it an A just because I wanted more from the end of it. It was just fantastic, and I highly recommend it. It was so beautiful and heartbreaking, and such an important story that history tends to forget. Next, I watched another movie, and that is Batman and Robin, the Batman movie with George Clooney. This movie is recognized as being absolutely horrible, and I can attest to that, but it's also wonderful. This was my first time watching it, and my god, I don't even know what to say about it. It was hilarious to watch. It's sad that it's not meant to be funny, because it's really funny. And this movie has a stacked cast. You have George Clooney, and then you have Uma Thurman, and you have like Arnold Schwarzenegger, which I mean, maybe you're not expecting the best performance from Arnold, but he plays Mr. Freeze, and just all these horrible like cold frozen puns come out.
You are not sending me to the cooler. All right, everyone, chill. Stay cool, bird boy. Let's kick some ice.
And it's so bad. And Uma Thurman, like, Uma Thurman is a badass, and she was just equally horrible.
His name is Bane.
And George Clooney, a reputable actor.
The heat is on.
All of them were horrible in this movie. Like, realistically, this movie gets like a D. However, at the same time, I feel like it almost deserves an A as an art form of what not to do. It was enjoyable. And the next thing I watched is also related to Batman, and that is Star Kids' production Holy Musical Batman, which was just fantastic. If you are not familiar with Star Kid, they did the Harry Potter musical series. Definitely check them out. They are just so wonderful. They make these parody musicals, and they also have some original musicals, and they are just, first of all, so talented. And second of all, like, the stories are so good. So Holy Musical Batman is obviously, it's about Batman and Robin, and it is just wonderful. The music is wonderful. I listen to it in the car all the time. The 2 stars of it are Joe Walker and Nick Lang, who play Batman and Robin respectively, and they are just both wonderful. Everyone does a fantastic job. This production gets an A+, and it's available all for free on YouTube, so do yourself a favor and check it out. Then I read This Savage Song by Victoria Schwab. This was actually a reread of it for me because I wanted to prepare for our dark duet, and I absolutely adore this book. I love it. It is so good. The characters in it are fantastic. The basic plot of it is that in this world, violence breeds literal monsters, and there are 2 main characters. One is a human who strives to be monstrous, and the other is a monster who wants to be human, and it is just beautiful, and it's beautifully written. Victoria Schwab is just a wordsmith. She's a genius, and so this book gets an A from me. Then I have another movie that I watched, and that is Hacksaw Ridge, starring Daniel Radcliffe. This movie has a stacked cast too. Like, it's like Daniel Radcliffe, Vince Vaughn, Sam Worthington, really just all of them also phenomenal in it. This movie was nominated for several Academy Awards. It was fantastic, and it is the true story of this man, Desmond Doss, portrayed by Andrew Garfield, who was a conscientious objector during World War II, except not really. He called himself a conscientious cooperator. And so conscientious objectors were people who, on terms of their religion, if they were pacifists, were able to not serve because of that and not be drafted because of that. Desmond Doss, however, did serve. He wanted to serve. He just didn't want to carry a gun because of his religious views. He didn't want to kill anyone. He ended up serving as a combat medic. And of course, everyone is skeptical of someone who wants to go into battle without any weapon on him. But he explains it as he wants to be there to save lives, not to take them. And he ends up just saving a ton of people and showing such heroism and bravery, and it is a beautiful, beautiful story. I definitely do want to mention this movie is rated R for just really, really graphic violence and war scenes. I'm not usually someone who's bothered by violence or gore in movies or on television, but this movie definitely got me. It was incredibly intense and just so realistic. It reminded me a lot of the first scene in Saving Private Ryan, the D-Day scene, which in cinema is kind of held as like a standard of accurate portrayal of warfare, and I think that Hacksaw Ridge is probably on par with that. And what is most disturbing to me was that, you know, this stuff was real, this did happen. Definitely be wary of that if that is something that bothers you going into watching this movie. However, as I said, it was just so amazingly well done. The actors were amazing. Andrew Garfield was fantastic. On to a lighter note again, and also back to Batman, the next movie that I watched was Lego Batman, and this was a very fun movie. I'd actually started it and then I fell asleep watching it just because it was really late. So several weeks later I finished it. I definitely enjoyed it more the first time I watched it because, you know, I didn't know the jokes that were coming, but it was hilarious and wonderful, and I really enjoyed it. It was a fun movie. It poked fun at Batman and Robin and that whole dynamic and everything, and all the characters were wonderful, and I give this movie an A-. Okay, we are on a movie roll here for some reason, I guess. The next movie that I watched was Spider-Man Homecoming, and this movie was amazing. It is the Spider-Man movie that I think we've all needed. First of all, we're in the MCU now, which is fantastic. Second of all, Spider-Man is now like actually appropriately aged. I think Tom Holland is like 21. He's playing, you know, a teenager, and he definitely looks like Peter Parker. Side note, I'm now in love with Tom Holland. Like, I am obsessed with him. I think that he's so adorable. He seems so cute, and he was so talented. He is also British. That's a lot of points right there. This movie was fantastic. I enjoyed it so much, and it was just so much fun, and I'd love to see Spider-Man now in the MCU. I'm so excited to see his future role in it and how he does, and him interacting with the rest of the Avengers. But it was just such a fun movie and so cute and good. Marvel movies are starting to really feel like comic book movies to me, and I think that all started after Guardians of the Galaxy, which a lot of people were afraid like was gonna be too much, it was gonna be too ridiculous in a sense. And then after seeing how well it did, I think that Marvel really kind of hopped on that bandwagon of making these like really comic booky movies, and Spider-Man I think definitely was in that vein, and I think that it just made it so much more wonderful, and so I gave this movie an A. And I give Tom Holland an A+ because I love him. Back to books just for a second here, and the next book that I read is Our Dark Duet by Victoria Schwab, which obviously, because I mentioned that I had reread This Savage Song in preparation for this, I then read Our Dark Duet, and I read it during Booktubeathon and the biannual Bibliothon, blah blah blah. It was the only book I read during the readathon, but I read it in like 2 days, so I'm very proud of myself for that. It was fantastic. I was a little broke, and by a little I mean a lot, but I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to spoil. This book was fantastic, and I give it an A+ because frankly Victoria Schwab deserves that for the way that she made me feel feelings. I don't usually get emotional with books, and she achieved it in this, so like kudos to her. A+. And we are to the last story that I consumed this month, and that is another Star Kid production, and it is a Harry Potter Senior Year, the third and final installment in the Harry Potter musical trilogy, and it was just so wonderful to watch. The music was great, everyone did a fantastic job. Like Holy Musical Batman and every other Star Kid show, it is available for free on YouTube. Definitely recommend checking it out. And it really gave me the feels at the end because, you know, it was like the last one in this little series, and it kind of brought up all that Harry Potter nostalgia and talks about how Hogwarts is always your home, and it's just so sweet, and oh, it's beautiful. It's wonderful. I give this production an A. Okay, we did it. Finally, we made it through. Congratulations to us all. That is my roundup for the midsummer mark, except really 2/3 of summer, for June and July, to put it simply. I read some really good books, watched some really good movies and TV shows. I guess in those terms, it was a very successful 2 months. Let me know what stories you have read or watched these past few months, or if you have read or watched any of the things that I have mentioned in this video. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you would like to see more from me, please hit the subscribe button down below. That is it for this video, and I will see you guys next time. Thank you, and bye! Shadow and Bone by Leo This movie, and not movie. Conscientious, but I can't say that word.